Welcome to the Critical Media Studies Podcast. We're your hosts, Mike Rapici
and Barry Fall.
Dr. Michael, how are you this evening?
Dr. Barry, I'm fine. How are you?
I'm doing well. We're ready to talk about, I'm excited to be here in the Zoom room with you, as always.
As am I.
And I'm happy to continue our discussion, which we started in our last episode, of Juan Fontcuberta's Pandora's Camera, his 2014 published in 2014 meditation on the meaning of photography. And the meaning, I guess, how would you describe it? The sort of meaning and significance of photography? What is this book about?
How
you would describe it?
I think that's a slice of it. I think it's maybe the place of photography, the function of photography.
That's a better way of saying it. I think I agree with you. So tell me, please continue your inspired thought, because I think saying it's merely giving you the history of photography, although two chapters we're talking, especially this chapter, the Eye of God.
Yeah,
this is historical minded, right?
The Eye of God, I think, is he's tracing photography from where he starts in the earlier chapter that we discussed last time,
in its analog form.
Yeah, but the thing that he was talking about last time was the street photographer and the idea of a hasty turnaround and a moment captured. And so he's playing with the idea of a frozen moment. And I think that what happens with this chapter is now he looks at the technology that replaces that street side frozen moment with, specifically designed technologies to do that at a higher level. And rather than freezing a moment in time, he's looking at the idea about what the various versions of a quick turnaround mean in terms of privacy, in terms of ubiquity, in terms of memory, in terms of disposability or longevity. And so I think that he's looking at, I don't know, you tell me if you think this works. Maybe as photography sort of evolves technologically, he's looking at the different roles that it comes to fill and what those things mean for us in terms of our interactions with photography. That's my.
I think that's wonderfully helpful. And as you were delineating, if I can say it, that I had another idea, another descriptor. He is doing a kind of, in talking about the different cultural functions that photography plays or takes or makes over the course of the last 100 or so years. He's also kind of doing a philosophy of photography. And in that sense, Fontcuberta's book takes its place on the shelf with really just a couple other books that, you and I know about. I don't think there are a lot of books like this, but he's trying to place it. He's in dialogue and with Roland Barthes, Susan Sontag, and a couple other writers who are trying to come up with a philosophical explanation of the different functions, of the different cultural functions that photography plays in modern society. So I think that's kind of what's going on. And in this particular, I think without any further ado, we can talk about the real subject of this particular episode, which is the second section in our last podcast, available on all fine streaming platforms. We talked about his first chapter.
Yeah.
But we're talking about the Eye of God chapter, its second chapter in Pandora's Camera. And I think this chapter is very specific and very specifically incorporates a broader history. In the first chapter, he was trying to incorporate a personal history of photography, talking about how photography actually brought his mother and father together and thereby produced him. In this chapter, I mean, roughly speaking, or broadly speaking, the eye of God, Fontcuberta is thinking about the different cultural functions played by what I'll call darkroom photography and the new functions that digital photography seem to be playing in contemporary society. And it's good to mention the date before I go any further, right? So, by contemporary society, present day society, this book was published in 2014 in Spanish. Or maybe that was the first English translation, but it can't be too much
Hmm.
before 2014. So, this is a little bit timestamp, but as you and I were talking about, this text has a timestamp on it. But as you and I were talking about, um, it's pretty fresh and pretty far-seeing, so we don't feel like we're dealing with an anachronism or archaic stuff here in this text, right?
No, I think it holds up quite well. If anything, he seems to be one of those thinkers who really pretty much nails it. I mean, I don't think that you have a whole lot of explaining or adjusting of his theories to account
To
for the
account for
evolution.
2025, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it holds up quite well.
Well, let's just proceed at for us lightning speed,
Breakneck
at a
speed.
light at breakneck speed. Okay. So what's the beginning? What's his beginning point in the eye of God? Fontcuberta notes, well, I'll just read this bit where he begins with Polaroid and Polaroid beating Kodak. And so I'll just read this portion of it from very early on in the chapter. And it kind of mentions this is his description of the rupture, the thing that will very soon bring us to present day reality or the present day cultural function of the photograph with the advent of digital photography. Okay, so Polaroid's initial success, and this will give me and you and everyone a chance to sort of luxuriate in his fine prose because there's some beautiful phrasing here, even in translation, which is saying something, right? Imagine how beautiful and mellifluous, I can't even pronounce it, musical the prose must be in Spanish. Polaroid's initial success had been based on an obvious technical factor, the reduction of the weight between the taking of the shot and the delivery of its visible manifestation. Effectively doing away, this is a beautiful phrase, effectively doing away with the dark room and the dark arts that were practiced there. The miracle of the image was made more accessible. On a metaphysical level, this also did away with the notion of the latent image with its poetical, philosophical aura, not referenced, but clearly in his mind, Fontcuberta's mind, are Walter Benjamin's comments on the aura of the painting in regard to the photograph and to cinema, and shortened the time spent in the limbo of uncertainty between the shot and the developed prints, which was at the mercy of so many hopes and fears. In other words, the dark things could go wrong and did go wrong in the dark room. So Polaroid invented by shortening by by eliminating really the mystery and aura of the dark room. Um, Technology made photography more speedy, more efficient, more automatic,
More immediate, I
more
think.
immediate.
And
Yeah.
so it's interesting that you had mentioned the dark room and things going wrong. The other thing that I thought he was talking about here a bit was the idea of authenticity. And
Oh, absolutely.
you
That's
know,
implicit in Benjamin's notion of the aura, right?
yeah, yeah, that we have, not only do we not have to wait, but the lack of a break between taking the image and then waiting, and the apprehension or the anxiety that might build, it brings us closer to that image. We have it. It's immediate. But unlike digital photography, right, the Polaroid creates an actual artifact. It becomes something distinct from the moment, yet an accurate representation of the moment.
Well, since you already invoked the digital photograph, let's continue our breakneck
Flying through. This all comes this
flying through this essay.
miraculously, this all comes together at the end.
All yeah. Although I said breakneck, and I'm going to transition in breakneck speed, but I'm going to read a fairly longish passage,
Yeah.
and then after that, or well, feel free to interrupt me, Michael. But maybe you want to. Obviously, you will have time to comment after I read, but you can break it up as I read if you prefer. But let's move because he does talk about it. Let's move to Fontcuberta's discussion of what follows from the Polaroid camera, the next revolution in photography, which has to do with the digital camera. And here are his comments on that. So a couple things here. First thing, this is on page 25 of the translation of Pandora's camera, if you're following at home. The realm of personal and family life was the privileged domain of the Polaroid camera, which also became a valuable tool in the hands of pop and conceptual artists, thinking of Andy Warhol and others, until the digital camera put an end to what can be seen as the golden age of Polaroid, which must now be considered extinct. So digital photography, first thing to be said, digital photography marks a kind of rupture in Fontcuberta's history of photography. So we've come to the equivalent of an evolutionary dead end. Polaroid, as amazing as it was, that's an evolutionary dead end.
Right.
A new species has emerged. So continuing with that. Note that ontologically, the photograph dissolves into the image, and this phenomenon of dissolution effectively discredits the proverbial natural. Now, I think he's talking about the digital photograph. Am I right?
I think so.
I think at this point, yeah. Note that ontologically, the digital photograph dissolved into the image, and this phenomenon of dissolution effectively discredits the proverbial naturalism of photographic representation. The
Can you un
empirical, yeah,
can you
yeah.
unpack that for a second?
Well, I was hoping you wouldn't ask me that question because it's hard. I was stumbling over myself. But Michael, it's our job to unpack
It
things, so I
is.
should not be afraid. So I think one of the things that's going on there. I'll take a pass
See,
and then you stop. Then you can I take a quick
absolutely.
pass
I asked
and
you
then
to.
you
So
go.
yeah, yeah.
Um, uh, the quick pass I will take on this is one thing that was going on in the dark room, and I guess maybe there's shades of Bazin and the idea that the photograph automatically gives you a picture of reality in a way, a painting,
Right.
because of its subjective element. One, that in a sense, the digital image, by by sundering that relationship to by erasing the dark room, um, the naturalism, the ties of photographic representation to the real world, to a real world outside, is being broken. I mean, that's my first pass on it. Now, as soon as I say it, I start wondering, well, why is that? And maybe you have an answer to that.
Well, I think
Do you
I
read
think
it differently? Do you read it
well,
differently?
I don't know. He addresses your question in the following line. I just ontologically the photograph. He's talking about the actual image itself. The if we were
Yes.
the artifact of the photograph, the thing
Yes.
dissolves into the image. So we cease to see this as a photograph. It becomes the image itself.
So the world is less important. Okay. That's the other part of it. The other part of it is because the image has replaced the world now.
Yeah.
Is
So
that is
that
that the
well
break with naturalism?
well
The
this
image has replaced the world.
the phenomenon of disillusion effectively discredits the proverbial naturalism of the photographic representation. In other words, I think this hints at where he goes later. The idea of the representation of the real seems to be less significant than
Yeah.
the photograph itself.
Yes. Yes. Exactly.
Okay,
Exactly.
okay. I just
Yeah.
want to make
Yeah.
sure we're on this.
Yeah. No. I think you, especially in your last summary statement, I think that's what he's
Okay, okay. So
that's
we're
what he's
seeing.
working through in this right here. Let me read a little bit more of this
Yeah.
paragraph and then also get into a very resonant example from the movie Ridley Scott's 1982 movie Blade Runner, where he revisits a theme from the, or Fontcuberta revisits a theme from the first chapter where he talks about memory and the
Yep.
relation between, which is also central to Roland Barthes' theories, philosophy of photography, which is largely a meditation on the role of memory. So before we go there, let me read a little bit more about the sundering between the empirical roots, between the image, what it means to say that the image replaces the photograph. So I'll read a little bit more of the paragraph, just picking up where you left off. The empirical roots of photography are being loosened, and its credibility is coming to depend on the credibility of the photographer. Now, that we might question that statement later, but I think he's using that example to show that the image is sort of replacing, the representation is sort of replacing the thing that is being represented. The signifier is replacing the signified.
Right. And authenticity in this regard is based in ethos somehow that we,
Yeah.
so this
Yes.
is,
The ethos of the photography,
yes, yes. So this is
photographer, according
right.
to him.
So this is now this is where I think it does show its age. This is a very, all right, I'm about to say something that just is going to maybe bend some brains here, but this is a pre-post truth statement.
It most certainly is, because he's assuming, no, exactly right. And this is okay. We said in general, this is not a dated essay. In this
This dates it's
regard,
yeah.
this is dated because there is an assumption that there. I love the fact that you, Mr. Rhetoric, Dr. Rapici, used the word ethos because authenticity, uh, veracity has everything to do with the ethos, the reported authority. The ethos is the authority of the photographer, and the authority of the photographer vouchsafes for or credits the legitimacy of the photograph.
Yes,
Now
yes,
we know that is not true. That
yes.
is absolutely, the technology has made that impossible. And why is that, Dr. Michael? You know why. Well, how is the technology invalidated and
Well,
dated?
let's go two more lines and then we can talk. I think
Sure.
I'll read it out. So the authority of the technology has been
Mm-hmm.
ousted by the personal repute of photographers, and this is where it gets a little spicy here, which should not grieve or alarm us, given that the same thing can be said in every other facet of human expression.
Ouch. Ouch. Not
Right.
dated well, not aged well.
That's we just after we finish saying how well this holds up, we get this section. So the issue for him is that technology in 2014, technology introduces some potential gray areas, but we can overcome those
Right.
with
Right.
with our faith in the source, the photographer, the right. And what I find interesting, and I'm curious as to how this is even a thing in 2014, is he says, this should not alarm us, right? Like this, the technology is going to create problems, but we have, the repute of photographers, given that the same thing can be seen in every other facet of human expression.
Oh, I got a gloss for this. And
Hit it.
unfortunately, I think it's tied to something you already mentioned. You already mentioned, and I think this is directly relevant to this, or shows the distance or explains the distance between these statements from Fontcuberta and our particular specific 2025 moment. What's the difference? You used the telling phrase. We are now in a post-truth. What was your exact
I said
phrase?
he
Post-truth regime?
this was written in a pre
Pre
post
post
truth
truth.
world,
Pre
right?
post truth. Let's go. So why does he say, here's my here's my specific gloss of that sentence. I want to return to it.
I think I
And let
know
me
where you're
read it in
going
our
here.
gloss. The authority of the technology has been ousted by the personal repute of the photographers. In other words, it's in the hands of the experts now.
Right, we
It's in the
triumph over
hands of
photo.
the
Right,
authorities now.
that's right.
So for that very reason, I'll resume reading the sentence. For that very reason, because it's in the hand of the photographers, we don't. The photographer is the expert. No problem here, folks. Move along
So,
because that shouldn't grieve or alarm us because experts are in control in every other facet of human expression. Whoa, the distance between 2014 and 2025.
so yeah, okay.
I mean,
Um,
I mean, is that not it? Isn't this
no,
like
that's
he,
100% it. I
he
think
has
that
faith in experts, and he even says, "Reader, come on, let's move on here. Let's move
which is
on.
which
Nothing to
is
discuss here."
which is interesting because even in 2014, when we still apparently believed in the value of expertise, he's
Yes,
well
right.
aware of the fact that in
You can have
14,
digital
digital
fakes.
photography was still, virtually ubiquitous. It was
It's
everywhere.
it's true, but
And
here's the
so if
thing: if
go
you
ahead,
believe that that photographer, that new digital photographer, is an expert, all is well. It's in good hands, my friend.
even when everyone's a digital photographer, or that's his point, right? That we could have
Well, that's an interesting point.
or was the point that we could distinguish between the throng
It's a good
of
point.
amateur photographers and
Yes,
somehow expertise
yes,
shown through.
yes. I think that there is this implicit faith that it's still, even if the new technology is going to get democratized, still the rule of experts is going to continue in this new realm, as it is or has in every other realm, according to Fontcuberta,
Historically.
historically.
Right. Hmm.
But I think we put our finger, without really knowing it, dear listener, we didn't expect to find this this point in the passage, but I think we did put our. This does not invalidate, I think, Fontcuberta, and we're going to shift immediately into a kind of a side topic from this. But I do think we put our finger on a fault line in the essay or something that hasn't aged very well.
Yeah, I wonder. Let's move a bit further down into the Blade Runner section where we start
Yeah,
talking about memory because
memory. Let's do it.
I wonder if this has this distinction between um the expert and the amateur has something to do. Well, let's go. Well, I don't want to get us sidetracked.
Well, this is a related topic, but a different topic from, the relation between photography and naturalism and the image in the world or the image replacing the world, where he returns, Fontcuberta in the next paragraph, returns to the Barthian theme of the photograph as being a privileged carrier, a material artifact of memory, right? A
Hmm.
materialization or externalization of memory. At the same time, photography has been tautologically linked to memory. And that connection is now beginning to break. In Ridley Scott more than memorable film, Blade Runner, the replicants carry fake family photos in order to create the semblance of memories, a simulacra of memory that might anchor their own imaginary past lives. We know that these pasts do not exist because their lives are artificial. But in the cerebral circuits of these almost human organic robots, the photographs are proof of conviction, basically a means of convincing the replicants themselves
Right,
that
right.
they are real and really human. Memory gives them identity, and identity makes them real. For nearly 200 years, photography has nourished archives and collections. But the other major repository of photographs, the family album with its holiday snaps, that's a particular interest, by the way, dear listener. If you want to read really interesting comments on the family album, we would refer you specifically to a text we talked about before, Susan Sontag's On Photography, where that I think is her specific contribution to the philosophical history of photography. Anyway, I continue. But the other major repository of photographs, the family album with its holiday snaps, remits us to the same condition as the replicants and their desire to construct a past in which to ground themselves and build an identity. Okay, so do you have a quick gloss of that before I move to almost the end?
Yeah, I think I don't know if it's a gloss so much as maybe a question described or
Mhm.
disguised as a gloss here. But so the
Yeah.
argument he seems to be making is that memory is certainly tied to the image,
Hmm.
but the image doesn't need to be real. We can create,
But the image doesn't need to be
right?
real.
So what got me, so that's his argument, right? We can look through
Yes,
the, and I guess this is where we have like nostalgia, for example, right? The ability to
exactly.
whitewash a past and sort of revisionist history in that, or
Sure.
really create a history that was never there to begin with.
And also, what begins in this argument, and he continues in, I'm going to skip to the next page, and but he's transitioning already to an argument that he develops in the final section of the essay, to which I will turn, that basically says that maybe the Barthian assumption or presumption or argument that photography and memory, that these are things that are really necessary, tautologically
Well,
linked,
they're tethered to each other, certainly.
tethered to each other. But I think he's going to say that also with digital photography, there
Hmm.
is a kind of slippage or a decoupling that is about to happen.
Well, this
So,
is,
uh-huh.
yeah, no, I just want to say quickly, this is
Sure.
where this notion of memory and authenticity and ethos, what I was going to say earlier was I
Mm-hmm.
wonder if
Mm-hmm.
somehow the ability to have faith was connected to Barth's idea, and we talked about this last time, of the studium and the punctum, and
Mm-hmm.
our ability to sort of culturally galvanize around certain ideas or images and say, okay, this resonates with us. But I
That's a
think
great point.
I
That's a
think what's
great observation.
fascinating, what's fascinating about this idea is, obviously digital photography and the replicants here, right, is purely manufactured, right? And if we look at a, actual, lived real life version of this, the flood of digital images, right, the ubiquity of these images creates a scenario where our connection to actual memory, this is where I sort of find a potential contradiction here. This idea um, that memory is tied to images and we're so flooded with these images
Hmm.
that we're going to sort of create this, I don't know whether it's an individual or a collective
Mm-hmm.
relationship. I
Mm-hmm.
guess it would have to be both, that may or
Mm-hmm.
not actually have anything to do with the reality.
Yes, I think that's where he's going to go to in the next section.
Well, let's go there.
Let's go there. Um, so I think in his provocative the provocative close to the Eye of God, Fontcuberta suggests a kind of rupture with the old regime of the older truth procedures or um, philosophical implications of the photograph that are, and in fact, I think he opened up the book by saying there are ways in which photography kind of gives us a picture of ontology, our relationship to being.
Yes.
And now he is shifting to say maybe we have a different relationship to being, or a different relationship to being is being transacted through the photograph. And with that,
Well,
I'll pick up.
hold on.
Yeah,
I
sure.
don't think that his decision to use the family album is accidental in
Mm-hmm.
this regard, right? Like that
Mm-hmm.
album is assembled as
Mm-hmm.
a curation of family histories, right? Like this is,
Indeed.
the idea isn't that we are sort of opening up an opportunity for, you know, kind of like a choose your own adventure of memory. This is supposed to be a documentation. And when we come to it now,
Except documentate. But anyway, the
no, go ahead, go
documentation
ahead,
is
go
going to
ahead.
shit. No, no, no. Go.
Oh, it's just that I think now with just again the overwhelming presence of digital images, that connection to a documented history slips.
Exactly. And that's the point he makes, the provocative point
Yeah.
that he tries to make in his closing passages. So I'll shift. In these conditions, to page 27, in these conditions of absolute iconic image saturation, why do we keep on taking pictures? So there he gives us some suggestions. He has a couple inspired guesses as to our motivation. Uh, Contemporary motivation to keep on taking not just pictures, but a hell of a lot of pictures.
Yeah.
And this is pre-Instagram. Is this not pre-Instagram? I guess it is, right?
Oh, I
Instagram
don't
is
know. I'll
2015.
I'll look that
Can
up
we
while
do
you.
can we do a real-time fact check with AI
Absolutely.
to
Absolutely.
find out
Well,
about that?
I'll do something like that.
Dear listeners, bear with us. I'm treading water here while we do a real life. Hello,
Uh,
dear
inst,
listeners, we love
inst,
you.
okay, so Instagram was launched October 6th, 2010.
Uh-oh.
Um, which maybe
So maybe he is thinking of Instagram.
I think he's if he's not, he's seeking about an Instagram analog, certainly.
Yes. Okay. Well, this is where he goes to on page 27, or what he seems to be talking about or dreaming about on page 27. Nowadays, most photos are taken not by adults, but by young people, teens and preteens. And their photos are conceived not as documents, which you were talking about just a moment ago,
Right,
Dr.
right,
Rapiji,
right.
the carefully curated family album that archives and documents family
Archive is
photos,
the right word. I like that.
right? And their photos are conceived not as documents, but as amusements, as vital outbursts. This is one of his, I love this phrase. I wrote it down in my notes and in the margins because I think it's just, it's a lovely way of putting it. And I think very accurate way of putting it. Photographs are no longer documents, but amusements, vital outbursts of self affirmation.
Mm-hmm.
I exist and I just had this meal and I'm so vibrant about eating and this meal and I'm so full of life and love that I've taken a picture. I'm
So yeah,
affirming my very existence.
we're taking pictures of our food for God's sakes, right? Like this is
Exactly.
yes,
They are the perfect embodiment of the paper hanky picture. What
the
is
paper
that
hanky
right?
picture. This is a
I
Kleenex.
don't know what that. Oh,
Use it once and throw it
use
away.
and throw away. Right, disposable. Well, pause for a question. A
Yeah,
pause for a question for
yeah, yeah.
Dr. Repeat. Is that what's going on with Instagram? Obviously, Instagram is instantaneous.
Right.
Obviously, it's meant to be replaced in a sequence. Like I had a vital affirmation of my life yesterday. I'm going to have another one tomorrow. I'm going to post that too. God help me, God willing, I'm going to have a lot of them this week and I'm
You
going to
know,
post them all. Does that make it a hanky? Is it all disposable?
well, I think so. This is interesting as a question because um, if and I don't know how this lines up in terms of the chronology, but if you think about how the camera on a phone is used, right? Most people probably have hundreds, if not thousands, of images
Indeed.
on the phone, which are the
Indeed.
very embodiment of this paper hanky idea.
I did, but is it disposable like the Kleenex?
Well,
Obviously,
it's disposable, I think, in the sense that it is not reused, it's not recycled. Like so many of those images on phones are taken and just languish. They don't do anything. They're
they
never
don't do anything.
now in terms of the social media aspect of this, I think that if you yeah, I mean I don't know that we bother. I think it's better to say this. I don't think that if you were to look at something like Instagram, there's a lot on there that's disposable. But the amount that doesn't even make it to Instagram, that's probably, exponentially larger
Sure, sure,
in
sure.
terms of the images that are absolutely taken because they're an amusement, they're an
Okay, I got
affirmation,
it.
but
I got it.
they're left.
Well, I think this is, you know, I, this was a digression, but I think it's kind of an important digression because what you're, I love your phenomenological reading of the experience. And you make me want to say, you make me want to conclude that actually there are degrees of Kleenex ontology. And so, like, for example, uh, I think the Instagram, by your logic, which I find compelling, not all images may be paper hanky pictures, but the Instagram picture is kind of a special paper
So he
hanky
does,
picture,
just for
right?
what it's worth, a little bit further down,
Yeah,
he
yeah.
mentions we now have Photologs, Blogsplots, Flickr, Facebook, Twitter, MySpace, a whole range of websites where people post their pictures for all to see and comment on. So if it's not
So
Instagram,
he would,
it is
yeah.
certainly, he's still in the same space.
I just had a tremor of memory. Speaking of memory, with Flickr, I remember that in the early 2010s. That's all I remember. Like every other thing I was looking at was a Flickr account. So yeah, um, yeah. So I wasn't thinking of Instagram, but definitely Flickr.
I do think we should talk about the different grades of paper hankies, though.
Well, I think I'm just following your logic here because I'm compelled by your argument. I do think that Instagram is the curated disposable image. We have to come up with that paradox
Well,
to
so,
understand the Instagram. It's a curated hanky. It's a curated disposable
and I
image.
think if we buy into that, right, this idea that there is somehow a hierarchy of disposable images, right? That not only is life the displayed version of our
Of
experiences
our experience.
disposable, right? Like our
Vital
amusements,
affirmation of our life, right?
right? But that there's actually levels that there are affirmations beneath the visual. So this is truly all encompassing. And I think that as we've become more sort of, technologically, as this technology has proliferated more and more, this is where I think his argument holds up quite well. This idea that we are, compelled to photograph everything. This is, I
Right. Well,
photograph,
we
therefore
come.
I am.
Yes.
And that
Yes.
there are actual, like, if we
Yeah.
acknowledge that even the best of it is disposable.
Yes.
So, all right,
Wonderful. I think we're ready to go to bring this boat into the port, into the pier,
let's take a picture.
and take a picture and post it on Instagram or use a hanky, use Kleenex. All right. Let's just go to the very end, shall we?
Hmm.
Because the culmination of this essay. And I'm interested in your comments, your concluding comments, Dr. Rapici. All right. Among these rules, the new rules, the first establishes that the flow of images is an indication in the flow of images, particularly of the digital
Yep.
image, is an indicator of vital energy. That ties in with the passage I read just a few minutes ago, which takes us back to the initial ontological argument that Fontcuberta began Pandora's camera with. The initial ontological argument of the book, I photograph, therefore I am. In other words, the eye of Zeus is the eye of
Zeiss.
Zeiss?
It's
Zeiss,
a
right.
reference to the Carl Zeiss
Thank
lenses.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. The eye of the camera has become a breath of life. We can now take pleasure in correcting Bart, who never knew the supremacy of the pixel. Well put. In analog culture, the photograph kills. But in digital culture, let's before I finish the sentence, let's have the critical media studies insert. In digital culture, the photograph is a pharmacon. I'm taking the liberty of putting the critical media studies imprint on this, and that I'm going to read that sentence again in its entirety. And I think what he's describing is something that Dr. Rapici and I have often talked about in this class, the pharmacological nature of modern technologies.
Right.
I will continue and conclude. In analog culture, the photograph kills, but in digital culture, the photograph is ambivalent. It kills us just as much as it gives us life or affirms our life. It extinguishes us as much as it resurrects us. So, welcome to the real world. Welcome to the world of images.
Okay. There's a handful of different ways of reading the end of this. And I thought coming in that I had my take on this. My initial take was that when he says in digital culture the photograph is ambivalent, I took that as a not so laudatory or complimentary sort of criticism on certainly contemporary photography, but also sort of the notion of where our heads and our attention and our memory or our ability to access memory are, right? But I have a question for you. In analog culture, the photograph kills. That's a reference to Bart and his issue with the
Believe
photograph. And
so.
if I recall correctly, this is that the photograph kills. This again, this is because it sort of insists upon its own representation of a moment or its own memory, right? Like it forces itself upon us.
Also, that it reminds us of our implicitly, it reminds us of our finitude and our mortality, because always the person who is depicted no longer exists.
Exists, right? And but in that foreign representation, it violates our own memory in a
Indeed,
way,
indeed,
right? So in digital culture, the photograph is ambivalent, right? So he's and so that it's so it says in digital culture, the photograph is ambivalent. There's a colon. It
indeed.
kills as much as it gives
Yes,
us life. So
yes.
it's giving us life. I want to work this backwards. It's
Hmm.
giving us life because it is a representation of our vitality. The more images we have, the more life we have. The more pictures of food and cute flip flops and whatever and cats, right? The more that we take
The more
pictures of,
cats, yes, exactly.
right? The more
Right.
life we have.
Yes,
Okay.
indeed.
But it's killing in that it is like, talk to
Where's the
me.
killing?
Yeah, where's the
Where's the killing
killing?
come from?
Because it's not Bart's killing. Or is it?
It,
Is he trying to
I think he is saying that Bart is still correct, but we've come up with a okay. Here's my reading, and I have to say, I don't want to be this guy who always just criticizes stuff, Michael. I like to affirm, especially when we're talking about a beautiful writer here, and I do feel that I have largely positive feelings about Fontcuberta.
Oh, without
Um,
question.
and especially in something that you just affirmed a minute or two ago, that uh, in terms of analyzing or anatomizing our obsessive concern with photographing our existence, he already anticipated that, and he perfectly describes 2025 reality. So many positive things. But as you were discussing it, and this would be my response to your question, and maybe the last thing I have to say about the essay, it's going to be I'm not quite happy with his formulation, because I think he means for us to say, or he means by, it kills us just as much as it gives us life. And I even said it's a pharmacon, it's ambiguous, as he describes it. It's killing us and it's giving us life. That's not my understanding of what he really means or what he's really describing. I think he concedes to Bart. Okay, so that part of the sentence or the phrase, it kills us, right? What does he mean by that? I think he's conceding that Bart is still right, that there is something about the image that necessarily reminds us of our finitude. Bart has that right. And yeah, Bart didn't have any digital photographs of his lovely mother. But if you had a digital photograph of his lovely mother,
He
it
would
would
have hated it.
still be a reminder of death, mortality, finitude, et cetera, et cetera. So, what's changed? I don't think he feels that something has changed in Bart's description. What's changed? This might be where I take issue with Fontcuberta. I don't think, according to his account, the photograph is really giving us life. I just think we are using and diluting, or there's an incredible act of will going on, that we are insisting. We've come up with a new way to functionalize or instrumentalize photographs. We are going to redefine these reminders of our mortality as if they are proofs of the fact that we will never die, that we will keep on consuming the products of life. That there is this idea on the internet, and we know this on the internet, you never die, Michael.
But
But you really, but bad news for all of us. We're going to F and die. But through our prosthesis, we can delude ourselves. So it gives us life, but I can't think Fontcuberta really believes that it's really giving us life.
so,
Fart is still right. In my reading, that sentence is a little bit misleading. There's no pharmacon going on here. Our willfulness is being demonstrated.
but the problem, I think, with that, and I don't mean to be a contrarian,
Please do.
but
I'm being a contrarian on this, so it would be good if you contrary to my contrarians.
there's been a profound shift in
Uh-huh.
photography,
Yeah.
right? Where we're now no longer documenting, we're entertaining ourselves,
Okay.
right? This notion of a picture of your mother, that's not what's happening. We're taking pictures of them all, and
Indeed.
we are flooding ourselves. So I honestly feel like part of what this discussion, and this is why I said I kind of looked at this the first time I saw it, and this ambivalence
Mm-hmm.
is the seriousness, like the value of photography has shifted. Its role
Mm-hmm.
is not the same anymore,
Yeah,
right? The
I would
the
agree with
the
that.
the picture of his father from the last chapter, the last
Mm-hmm.
episode, is
Mm-hmm.
not being taken anymore. And if it
Mm-hmm.
is being taken, it is being, sort of sewn under with a wash of just a bunch of other nonsense. And
Indeed.
I wonder if maybe that's it, that the kill is sort of this erosion of I think I don't know what to make of this. I think anything I'm going to say at this point kind of feels like a guess or a shot in the dark. He's in analog culture, the photograph kills. That's a clear reference back to pre-digital photography. That even, predates this whole idea of the Polaroid. Like that's, you have to wait and there's the aura and everything is what it was. But I don't understand. uh I like my pharmacons to be better defined, Barry. I like clear problems and clear benefits. And here it seems to me that it extinguishes as much as it resurrects us. I don't see that. Welcome to the world of images. We're awash in this. I don't see that as a positive statement.
And I'm with you. I had a different point of attack in that I'm thinking that the giving us life, I was questioning the idea that the photograph is truly giving us life. I think it's giving us a simulacra of life, or it's giving us amusement. It's entertainment, but it's not necessarily giving us life as opposed to um, reminding us of our finitude. But
Or
I
is
don't
this
want to make too much of a point of it. That's not a point of. I don't see that as a
no,
different
no, you're
point.
you're right. I think I think I'm getting sort of caught up in the space between 2014 and now. I think
Mm-hmm.
if we look,
Mm-hmm.
maybe the argument here is if we look back to a section on the Blade Runner and the
Mm-hmm.
replicants, and the idea here that
Mm-hmm.
these photographs can create memories. They can create things that weren't necessarily there.
But are they
Well, who
in
knows,
Blade
man?
Runner? Is that the point of Blade Runner?
No, but the point of that reference. God, we're
Yeah.
dragging this out so much for a quick exit. Um, the point of
There
the
will be no quick exit, I'm afraid, with this episode.
let's go back
But
in and sit down and
seriously,
have a chat.
but seriously, I mean that's a real question. I'm not being,
No, I get
I
it.
don't
I
think I'm
get it.
being contrary. Like, um, I think that is our one way of certainly that's my emotional response to Blade Runner. I feel that I'm emotionally when I watch that movie, I think that wow, you know, what's his name, Roy, uh, the great actor Rutger Hauer. I've seen things that,
Yeah.
you know. I feel that that replicant, that violent replicant, is human, right? He feels like he's reflecting on his own experience in a very human way. So emotionally, effectively, as a film spectator, totally, I'm there with believing that Sean Young is real.
Right.
I'm there with believing Rutger Hauer is real. But are they real? Just because they have a simulacra of memory?
Well, I think maybe that's the ambivalence, right? That
Maybe that's the ambivalence.
all right, we can make this. I'm good with
We
that.
could we could go for another episode, but let's not.
Let's not. Let's
Let's
not.
go for another. We could go for another hour, but for the sake of humanity, dear listener, we're stopping right here.
Absolutely.
But no doubt we'll be back with the Pharmacon in some form or other soon. And I like what you said, Michael. Okay, one more thing, but really just one more thing. Really just one more thing. I just want to reiterate what you said, that the Pharmacon, I am uncomfortable with this statement of ambivalence because I find it hard to unpack. That's all.
Well, so the thing that we've never really considered before, in for as long as we've been having these discussions, every time we bring up the Pharmacon, it's a case of, yay, boo, right? Good,
Yeah,
bad,
yeah,
kill.
right.
Yeah, I like yay, boo is going to be our new
Yay, boo.
response to this.
Yum
Um,
yuck. I've heard it
yum.
described. Yum yuck.
But we've never really talked about it in terms of degrees. And I
No,
think
we
that's
haven't.
and this is an interesting this notion of a pharmacological ambivalence, which is a mouthful, is kind of an interesting idea.
I agree. We'll return to it.
All right.
Thank you so much for an enlivening discussion. Thanks again to Gabrielle. Shout out to Gabriella for getting
Absolutely.
us on this track.
This was
Two
great.
episodes worth. Thank you, Gabriella. Thank you, Juan Fontcuberta. And
And thank
we'll
you,
hear
Barry.
you or be in contact again, dear listener, soon.
All right. Take care, Barry.
Thank you, Michael.
Thanks for listening to the Critical Media Studies podcast. To find out more about the show, check out our webpage at criticalmediastudiespodcast.com.